They told me to bring dessert and keep it light. I brought my late husband's favorite, a lemon tart with toasted almond crust, the one I used to make every spring for our anniversary. They didn't touch it. My name is Carolyn Pierce. I'm 67. And according to my daughter Melissa, that makes me emotionally fragile, not someone to be involved in logistics. That was the phrase she used. Logistics. Not the house or the accounts or the memory of a man I spent 40 years with. Just logistics. I ironed my blouse twice, put on the earrings James bought me after his first book deal, and told myself, just get through it. The dinner was set on Melissa's patio, strung with fairy lights and expensive wine. Everything looked perfect, polished, except no one looked at me. Melissa kissed my cheek like I was a guest speaker. Her husband, Tim, asked if I needed help finding a chair in my own folding set I lent them last fall. Our son David was already deep in conversation with his wife Lila. Something about investment properties. I poured my own water, sat at the end of the table, smiled once. Then Melissa cleared her throat and said, "So, we've all been thinking. It might be easier if you didn't have to worry about decisions right now." I blinked. David added, "Yeah, Mom. We've got this handled. You can just focus on healing." I asked gently. "What decisions?" Melissa looked down at her glass. "The property? The accounts? The legacy stuff?" And then Lila, smiling like she was passing the salt, said, "Maybe Carolyn should just let it go. She's the widow, not the planner." That word landed like a slap. Not the insult itself, but the certainty behind it. I set my fork down. Not hard, not loud. I didn't cry, didn't explain, didn't ask if they remembered who filed the taxes every year, who kept the business afloat when James had writer's block, who sold her wedding rings to pay the first mortgage. I just stood up, left the lemon tart on the counter untouched, and walked back to my car through a yard I'd mowed 100 times, uninvited from the life I helped build. The silence inside the car felt strange, at first like punishment. But then I realized it wasn't punishment. It was peace. And I hadn't felt that in a very long time. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for an hour. I sat in the armchair by the window, James's chair, the one with the frayed armrest he never let me replace. Outside, the wind knocked gently against the wind chime Melissa made in high school. It used to sound like music. Now it just sounded like a warning. I kept hearing it. She's the widow, not the planner. Like I'd been downgraded. Like the life we built together had been reassigned by committee. At 2:17 a.m., I stood up barefoot and walked down the hallway slow and quiet, like the house was watching. I opened the linen closet and reached past the towels, past the old pillowcases. Behind them, tucked in the back, where James always kept, the boring stuff was the Navy accordion file we used to call the if-then box. If something happened, then here's what you'd need. I hadn't touched it since the funeral. My hands were trembling when I pulled it out. Dusty. Heavier than I remembered. Inside were the usual suspects, life insurance titles, old letters from the bank. But then wedged between a copy of our marriage certificate and the deed to the cabin was a plain envelope. My name. In his handwriting. Carolyn. Not Mom, not Mrs. Pierce. Just my name. I stared at it like it might vanish. James wasn't a letter-writing kind of man. He left notes like call the plumber or don't forget eggs. But this wasn't a reminder. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single lined page folded once. Behind it, stapled documents. The letter began, "If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I know what they're trying to do. You spent your whole life holding us together. Melissa means well, but she's easily led. David's distracted. And Lila, well, I never trusted a smile that wide. I laughed. Not a happy laugh, more like a choke. He had seen it. I updated the documents last fall. Everything's in your name, house accounts, investment properties. They don't know. Let the lawyer walk you through it. Don't let them box you out of your own life. Don't let them shame you into silence. If they try, hit back. You don't owe them softness. I read it 3 times before touching the stapled stack. It was real, notarized, witnessed, signed by James and our longtime attorney, Paul Renner. I recognized the stamp. There were new terms, unfamiliar phrases, irrevocable authority, sole beneficiary, discretionary control. My name was on all of it. James had moved everything quietly, not out of spite, but to protect me. I sat there at the kitchen table as the sun started to crawl up over the backyard fence. I didn't make coffee, didn't even breathe much. The pie was still in the fridge, the one no one touched. I left it there, like a relic. At 6:03 a.m., I picked up the landline and dialed Paul Renner. He answered on the second ring, voice groggy. "Paul," I said. "It's Carolyn Pierce." I found the envelope, the one James left. Silence. Then, "Did you read it?" "Yes, all of it." Another pause. Then his voice sharpened. "Do they know?" "Not yet." "Good," he said. "Let's keep it that way. I'll be there by 9. I hung up, sat still, and for the first time since James died, I felt something other than grief. Not rage, not revenge, just readiness. By 8:40 a.m., the kitchen smelled like lemon oil and fresh printer paper. I'd cleaned the table, sharpened a pencil, and laid out a fresh legal pad. I wasn't sure why, maybe habit. Maybe because this was the first time in weeks I felt like something was mine to prepare for. When Paul Renner rang the bell at 9:02, I was already seated, dressed, hair pinned back, lipstick burgundy not soft. He carried the same cracked leather briefcase he'd used since James started his first LLC. We didn't shake hands. We just nodded. I gestured to the table. "Everything's here." He opened his case, took out a stack of matching documents, and sat down across from me. No small talk, no sympathy. Just, let's walk through it. For the next 2 hours, we went line by line. Power of attorney irrevocable. Title transfers already filed. Financial control clauses airtight. Trust dissolved 6 months ago. My signature was needed in 12 places. I didn't hesitate. With each page I signed, I felt a layer fall away, like I was unlearning how to stay small. Paul paused at one line. "Do you want to notify the estate accountant now?" I nodded. "Yes, but only him, not the family." He made the call, a short one. Just enough to trigger what needed triggering. Then he looked at me. "Do you want them to find out through locked accounts, or do you want to tell them?" I set down my pen. "Let them find out when the access disappears. Let it hit like a wall." He nodded once. No smile. No comment. Just, "You're ready." I didn't answer. I reached for the envelope James left me, folded it closed, and slid it into my purse like a blueprint. This wasn't revenge. This was enforcement. And I wasn't just holding paper. I was holding position. By 2:38 p.m., Melissa texted me. "Hi, Mom. Random question. Did the joint account for the cabin get changed?" I stared at the screen. Let the text sit there like a stranger at the door. 5 minutes later, David tried calling. I didn't answer. By 3:15, the family group chat was lit up. Anyone else having trouble logging into the broker portal? My card for the condo account just declined. "Mom, please call when you see this." I didn't. I poured myself a glass of iced tea, sat by the window, and let the panic do the talking. At 4:52 p.m., I slid the manila folder into my tote bag. At 5:06, I rang Melissa's doorbell. No warning, no RSVP. Tim opened the door, clearly surprised. He tried for a smile. Carolyn. We were just, is everyone here? I asked. Yes, good. I stepped inside. Walked to the kitchen counter. Set the folder down like it was a pie. Melissa was arranging charcuterie. Lila leaned against the fridge, scrolling her phone. David was on the couch, half listening to a podcast. None of them looked at me directly. We need to talk, I said. Melissa turned. About what, is something wrong with your phone? No, I said. Something's wrong with your assumptions. I opened the folder, laid out the documents. Neatly. This is the revised estate structure. Everything, the house, the rental properties, the investment accounts, is now under my name. Silence. Not shocked silence. The kind where no one knows who should speak first, because they're all silently calculating the damage. David was the first to break. Wait, you moved the assets. Without the trust board. I looked at him. Calm. There is no trust board. Your father dissolved it in October. You'd have known if you'd read past the first page. Lila stepped forward. Fake smile still on. Carolyn. I'm sure this can be discussed. This can't possibly be binding. I handed her the final page, notarized, signed, sealed. She blinked. I said, this isn't a negotiation. This is a notification. No one spoke. No one reached for the cheese board. I closed the folder. As of this morning, you have no legal claim to any of it. And moving forward, all decisions will go through me. Melissa opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. If you want to discuss my future, schedule it. Because starting today, I don't answer to uninvited voices. I turned, walked to the door. Behind me, I heard Tim say something to the effect of, You didn't tell me she could do that. I didn't look back. I didn't slam the door. I simply let it shut. Quietly. Because when power changes hands, it doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it just closes behind you and locks from your side. Paul didn't call until 2 days later, just after 10 a.m. There's something you need to see, he said. An hour later, I sat across from him at the same round table where James and I used to sign yearly tax documents and argue over whether to itemize donations. This time, there was no coffee. Paul slid a folder across the table, thicker than the last one, with a red tab peeking from the side. I opened it. Bank transfers. Loan applications. Lines of credit linked to James's business name, all signed by Melissa. She submitted these as acting co-owner during the final weeks of your husband's treatment, Paul said quietly. She claimed she had verbal authorization. There's no legal basis for that. Especially not after James signed the transfer of control to you. I stared at the pages. Numbers, dates, codes. But I didn't see digits. I saw betrayal packaged in decimal points. The down payment for the Tahoe ski house she bragged about on Instagram. The full remodel of their kitchen last fall. The boutique business account she claimed was angel-funded. All of it tied to money that was never hers. And money she stole while James was too weak to hold a pen. I looked up. Can we prove it? Paul nodded. Easily. But the decision is yours. We press charges, or we let her boil for a while. I didn't answer right away. I closed the folder, sat with it in my lap. Then I whispered mostly to myself. She wasn't even waiting for him to die. She was counting on it. My voice didn't shake. Not even once. That scared me more than anything. I drove home in silence. No radio, no traffic. Just me, the folder, and the sound of truth finally putting its weight on the room. At home, I didn't go to the kitchen or the bedroom. I went to the den, James's study, still untouched. Behind the bookshelves where he kept notes from every tax season, I found one of his old legal pads, scribbled near the back in blue ink, Check Melissa's Q3 withdrawals. Feels off? Ask Paul. He knew. He didn't get the chance to finish it. But I could. I picked up the folder, labeled it in bold black ink, firewood. Then I pulled out a clean notebook and began listing assets she was still tied to. Accounts to freeze, properties to reassign. This wasn't about revenge. This was inventory control, emotional and financial. The only thing I called that day was Paul's office. Don't press charges yet, I told him. Let her squirm. I want her broke before she's scared. 3 days later, Melissa invited me to brunch. She called it a reset. Just something light, she said. David and Lila will be there too. Nothing heavy. I didn't respond. I showed up. I wore the necklace James gave me on our 30th anniversary. A small amber stone he said reminded him of autumn light. I didn't bring flowers. I didn't bring pie. I brought the firewood folder. The table was already set on the patio when I arrived. White linens, folded napkins, enough Prosecco to drown a guilty conscience. Melissa was placing tiny croissants on a ceramic tray, like she hadn't stolen 6 figures while her father was on oxygen. David was in his usual spot, silent, vaguely uncomfortable. Lila wore oversized sunglasses and lip gloss so shiny it looked like armor. Mom Melissa chirped. You made it. I didn't hug her. I didn't even sit down. I walked to the table, set the folder down, and said, We need to talk. Now, Melissa blinked. Is something wrong? No, I said. Something's finally clear. I opened the folder and began laying out the documents 1, then 2, then 5. This is what you did, I said, not raising my voice. You funneled funds through James's business credit line, claimed verbal authorization, signed loan documents while he was undergoing radiation. David sat forward. Wait, what? Melissa scoffed, but there was a crack in it. This is absurd. You don't understand the structure. Dad would have told us if he knew I said cutting her off. He left a note. He didn't trust you to fix it. Lila reached for a document. I let her take it. These are notarized, she said, voice flattening. I nodded. With timestamps. And witnesses. All legal. All mine now. Melissa folded her arms. You're overreacting. I met her eyes fully for the first time in weeks. You weren't reacting at all. That's the problem. You were calculating. I paused. Let the air hang between us. No one touched their drinks. Then I stepped back, closed the folder, and said, This isn't a request. It's a record. And you're lucky I haven't pressed charges. Melissa's jaw tightened. You're trying to burn this family down over paperwork. I leaned in just enough. No. You did that when you used your dying father's name to pay for countertops. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was final. I turned, walked toward the edge of the patio. Lila muttered something I didn't catch. Probably didn't matter. Melissa called after me. You're bitter. That's all this is? You couldn't let go. I stopped. Didn't turn. I did let go. Of you. That's what you're feeling. Then I walked to my car, started the engine, and didn't check the rearview mirror. When you reclaim power, you don't need to explain it. You just walk forward and leave the door swinging behind you. Monday morning, I wore my gray blazer, the one James used to say made me look like I ran a firm. I didn't wear it for vanity. I wore it to the lawyer's office. Paul had already prepared the documents. I didn't ask how. He just handed me the file and said, These are the remaining assets under your name that they've been borrowing. I signed each form without comment. First, the summer cottage Melissa had been using for yoga retreats and wellness weekends, all funded by utilities I paid for. Gone. Listed for sale by Wednesday. Then the downtown loft David claimed was temporary housing during his job transition, rented on Airbnb for 2 years straight under the table. Lease terminated. Locks changed. And finally, the SUV Melissa drove, the one with the heated seats and the bumper sticker that said "Powered by Gratitude." It wasn't hers. It never was. The title still had James's name, and now, legally, mine. At noon, I called the dealership. "Yes," I said. "You can pick it up from the driveway. Mid-afternoon. She won't be home." I didn't text her. I didn't warn her. I didn't owe her the courtesy. By 3:40 p.m., I got a flurry of calls. One from David's mom. "Did the building manager just say we have 48 hours to vacate? This has to be a mistake." I didn't answer. Then from Melissa. "Okay. Not funny. Where is the car?" voicemail. "Are you seriously doing this without talking to me? I thought we were working on things." Then this is harassment. You can't just erase people from your life. I turned the ringer off. At 5:12, I heard tires screeching outside. Melissa, standing in front of my house in yoga pants and fury pacing the porch like she was performing grief for a jury. I didn't open the door. I stood behind the curtain, watched as she shouted things she thought would land. "You're unstable. Dad wouldn't have wanted this. You're punishing your own children." I didn't flinch, because discipline is not punishment, and consequences are not cruelty. Eventually, she left. The next morning, the loft was relisted with a new lock code. The cottage had 2 showings scheduled, and the SUV I watched from the kitchen as the tow truck pulled into her driveway while she was still on a FaceTime call, and that silence when the car disappeared behind her was louder than any apology she never gave. Melissa turned 39 the week after the SUV was repossessed. I know because she sent me an invitation, a cream-colored envelope with gold trim. Inside, dinner and drinks. Family only. No apology, no note. Just a line in delicate script that read, "We'd love to have you if you're ready to move forward." I didn't RSVP. I didn't need to. On the day of the party, I woke up at 6:00 a.m., made myself black tea, and sat in the sunroom with the paper. I didn't pick out a dress. I didn't buy a card. I didn't check the weather in case it rained on her backyard. But I did make one call. To the estate accountant. "Go ahead and finalize the reassignment on the condo," I said, "and pull the final audit for the trust account she accessed in 2022. He didn't ask questions. By noon, I'd signed 3 forms and emailed 2 notices. And by 4:15 p.m., while Melissa was getting her hair blown out and finalizing the guest list, she received her first alert: account access revoked. "Please contact administrator." She didn't call. She texted. Seriously? Today I didn't reply. Because when someone tells you family only, you believe them. Let them have their party. Let them raise their glasses and pretend I'm just away. But I know how those rooms feel. I know the weight of a chair that used to be mine. And I know what it means when everyone looks around and notices what's missing, but no one dares say her name. That night, while they posed for photos in front of rented balloons and cake tiers with gold letters, I sat on my porch. I poured a glass of Cabernet. I turned off my phone. And I let the quiet be the speech they never got to interrupt. Because not every presence has to arrive. Sometimes the absence is what echoes. And on the day they wanted me quiet in the corner of their celebration, I wasn't there. But somehow I was still the loudest thing in the room. The house was quiet again. Not empty, just quiet. No more missed calls. No more letters slipped under the door. I spent the morning organizing James's documents, sorting the keep from the shred. That's when I found it. A small brown envelope wedged behind the back panel of the safe. My name written in his handwriting, the kind he used for grocery lists and birthday cards. Never quite straight, but always steady. Carolyn, read this when you're ready. I sat at the old desk in the study, the one he refinished the year Ava was born. I didn't light a candle. I didn't play music. I just opened the envelope and unfolded the single sheet inside. If you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say it out loud. But I need you to know I saw it all. The way you carried everything without applause, without help. The way they dismissed you even when you were the only one holding things together. I didn't always say the right things. And I know I let them rewrite the story sometimes. But I never doubted who kept the lights on in this house and in me. Melissa may have been louder, David more charming. But you were the reason we lasted this long. I paused. Not to cry, but to exhale, as if I'd been holding my breath for years. There's an account you don't know about, tucked into the foundation papers in your name only. Use it how you see fit. Not for them, not even for Ava. Just for you. To build whatever you want. To become whoever you were before we asked you to carry us. I read the last line twice. Then again, I loved you most when you didn't try to be lovable. Just real. Just stubborn. Just Carolyn. You were never invisible to me. Never. I folded the letter back with both hands, carefully, as if it were breakable, and I placed it in the top drawer beside the photo of our first apartment. The carpet was terrible. The walls were thin, but we were both poor and certain. I hadn't felt certain in a long time. Until now. I walked past the living room wall twice before I stopped. The family photo still hung there, the one from David's wedding. I remember that day. The sun was too bright. My dress had a stain no one told me about, and they'd cropped the photo so my hand resting on James's shoulder was almost cut out of frame. Almost. I reached for the back of the frame and popped the clasps. I removed the photo, carefully peeled back the mat board, and slipped out the image. Then from the drawer beside me, I pulled out an older one. Just James and me. Younger, not thinner, just freer. We were standing in front of the first diner we ever owned, smiling like the roof didn't leak and the floor wasn't sagging. I placed that one behind the glass, and I left the other photo, the one with all of them, on the kitchen table. Not ripped, not burned, just not chosen. That evening I stopped by the florist downtown. Candace was there. She looked up and froze. Carolyn, she said. I didn't expect she reached out with a folded pamphlet. We're doing a tribute piece for James. You should say something. You should be included. I looked at her hand, at the pamphlet, at the scripted words she was about to string together, and I smiled, not wide, not cruel, just done. You can keep the sentence, I said. I don't need it anymore. Then I turned and left. At home, the air smelled like lavender. I poured a glass of water, sat down on the couch, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't wonder what they were saying about me. Because whatever it was, it didn't change the fact that I was still here, and they could no longer write me out.